introductions actually are disproportionate to the amount of time we have to devote to our discussion, so I'll fire ahead. I did receive the survey. I have to admit I was one of the 40% that didn't reply, so I'm guilty. I found the presentation today a lot more detailed, a lot more polished, a lot richer than the paper that we received. So my comments, which are actually more specific than Mine's useful broad categories, are specific to the findings that I found in the draft paper that I received. So 25 years after the setting up of the ERF, it's an opportune moment to take stock of the evolution, the development, and the landmarks in the development of MENA economics. This is done, as was said, through a survey of 355 ERF affiliates and fellows, and discussion with 20 eminent economists, many of whom are here. The response rate was around just over 40%, 163 respondents, 70% male, as was said. I'm just recapping. It's worth saying that preponderance were mainly Egyptian economists. Surprise, surprise, 26%, 1 out of 4. I suppose that's understandable, while about 60% in total were from the Arab countries. Perhaps, again, that's understandable given the ERF setup. Only 7% were from Iran and Turkey. To be exact, that makes, in my count, 11.41. No numbers are given. I have to deduce everything in terms of percentages, so the double-digit decimal point. 25% studied in Egypt, so again, another indication of strong Egyptian contingent. The stated objective of the survey is a valiant one, to understand how the schools of thought play a role in shaping public policies as well as overall development strategies. And this is the value of the exercise, because ideas influence actions, hence the focus on policy, and policies make an impact on society and economy, and therefore here we are. The methodology used is through self-identification, mainly 12 schools of thought. These were mentioned. It's a long list. I didn't see anywhere on that list the structuralists, the Latin American structuralists. Perhaps they are passé by today's standards, but it would have been good to include them for the sake of completeness. What is very interesting is 25% do not identify themselves with any school at all, and and 16% identify themselves with more than one school. I think this is worth pondering over the 25%. That's 1 out of 4 who do not identify themselves with any school. It is quite possible that they don't know. It's very possible. Or maybe they don't believe in the categories that were on offer. Theirs is somewhere else. Or do not believe in this exercise at all. Okay. A majority are found to be developmentalists, that's 14%, and the smallest percentages are neoclassicals, Marxists, and institutionalists, each at 1%. On my count, again, that's 1.53%. It's probably rounding up. The main findings, as were mentioned, were that we are as pluralist as economists everywhere else. We don't adhere to one and the same predominant school of thought. You could say this is great, we are pluralist, we have multiplicity of ideas, or you could say we are a confused lot. Take your pick. It was also mentioned that 30% of the respondents that were female, actually gender matters in terms of findings. They agree that inflation unemployment trade-off is important. They support cash transfers as opposed to benefits in kind, and they are more pro-consumer protectionist. Now, let me cast some doubts about the extent to which we can generalize on the findings. I realize I have less than 45 seconds. I added together 3 categories from the graphs. The least responses were from the categories institutionalists and Marxists. These were 1% each. And then the developmentalists were the highest category at 14%. The blue line is the Marxist. You can see that they respond to only one question. Then they went on holiday, or they slept, or they switched off their computers. So the response rate not only the number in this category is very low, but also the response rate is low. So we can't categorize. Even with the developmentalists, which were the largest single self-identified category, as you can see, the response rate is less than 100%. That is the green line. So there is serious limitation on the extent to which we can justify. I think, although this exercise is very useful, rounding up, there are severe limitations at this stage. It has to be looked at again in some depth before we go further. For me, this is an opportunity to examine what we mean by Middle East economics. None of the questions were specific. None of the 13 questions were specific to the MENA context. These were standard textbook economic questions that we examined in the MENA context. It would be good to take stock of some of the work that has been done in ERF research and put these back to the fellows and ask them to categorize these and identify them according to the schools of thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you.